Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of The Formula. I'll be your host this evening. My name is Trevor Carlson, and on The Formula, we break down and explore the elements of achievement in world-class performers. We talk to people from around the globe on their experiences, routines, habits, failures, all kinds of things that have gone into building the career and creating the person that they are today. This week's guest is a friend of mine from Cedar Rapids. His name is Tim Gallenbeck. He is one of the top Etch-a-sketch artists in the U.S., maybe even the world. I first ran into Tim at a Acro Yoga event here in Cedar Rapids down at the market. While I was walking through, I saw some friends out there doing some different Acro Yoga moves, and I got introduced to Tim. Then I got to see some of the art that he'd made using like an Etch-a-sketch, right? Like the same thing that kids play on. Well, Tim uses those to make some really interesting pieces of artwork. And I guess there's a community of these people from all over the world that partake in making these things. It's not a very big community, but Tim does an amazing job. In this episode, we talk about what it even means to be an Etch-a-sketch artist. How did Tim figure out he was any good at it? How he kind of creates his perfect workspace, and really like how becoming quote unquote Zen and getting into Acro Yoga has affected his ability to maybe get into his creative zone. So I enjoyed this interview. I learned a little bit about, Tim's process and how you even go through making an Etch-a-sketch piece of art. And I hope you have a few takeaways as well. Let's get this episode started with Tim Gallenbeck. On this episode of The Formula, I have with me Etch-a-sketch artist Tim Gallenbeck. First of all, Tim, thanks for being on the show today. Appreciate it. So let's kind of talk about the creative process of, well, actually, you know what? Let's not do that. What the hell does it even mean to be an Etch-a-sketch artist?
That's a great question. Basically, everyone knows what the Etch-a-sketch is. What I do, I just take it to a whole different level and create pictures like you would if you drew with a pencil, but on the Etch-a-sketch, turning the knobs left and right, creating the diagonals and circles. And doing that, I end up selling the pieces and preserving them. So a lot of times, Etch-a-sketch, you shake it up. People always ask me, well, how do you sell these pieces? I drain out the aluminum powder out of the back of them and end up, keeping them permanent so they never get shaken back up. That being said, creatively, to me, it's an easy thing to do to kind of, draw these pictures on there. But yeah, it's one of those things where I just happened to figure it out. I had this random talent. So,
How did you find out that you were talented at Etch-a-sketch art?
So it was about 5 years ago. I was in a thrift store and found an Etch-a-sketch for 99 cents, and figured I'd pick it up and play around with it. And it was about this time, about 5 years ago during Christmas, and I was sitting at the table and did a little Christmas scene, like a tree, fireplace, stuff like that. And my family was like, "Oh, that's super good." And, me thinking nothing of it, I thought it was, just, doodling. And I started playing around a little bit more and realized I actually could draw, more pictures. And so I would just play around with it here and there every so often. But not until about last year, I started picking that Etch-a-sketch back up. And looked online just out of curiosity to see if there's anyone else that could do pictures. Found out there was a little small community of people and connected with them through basically Facebook groups, stuff like that, and realizing there's other people out there that did it. And it was really cool to find out there's all these other techniques on how to Etch-a-sketch. People had their own ways to do it. And there was probably about less than, I think in the group we are on Facebook, there's less than 90 of us on there. But actively Etch-a-sketching, I think there's like maybe about 30. And then I found out there's probably about 6 of us that actually do commission work in the U.S. or all over. I mean, I don't really know where everyone's exactly from, but yeah. And so out of, last year doing a little bit more and more people found out about it. I started a little Facebook page and Instagram, and people started to want me to do commissions for them. So I started doing stuff for people, portraits, stuff like that. And that just kind of took off from there. People started finding out about it, and more people heard that I could do this. And for me, I wasn't, thinking it was that hard. And then it's always great to see people when they see the Etch-a-sketch and the finished product, like how amazed they are at the final sketch that I do. So it just kind of organically has grown into starting to do commissions, and I've started to do some corporate commissions for businesses, and I've gotten some stuff in some galleries now, and just continuing to kind of take it to a whole different level.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your stuff you did, because you did Starry Nights. You've done, what's the one? The American Gothic. You did American Gothic. I've seen you do a bunch of other, like recreating other drawings and stuff like that. And it's always, I'm like, damn, I can't even draw that good with a pencil, and you're spinning a couple knobs around and making it look really good. So when you sit down to work on a project or Etch-a-sketch, a piece of art, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so I found out the best thing for me to do is to have a dedicated space for that. I went out and actually got a drawing table, ended up getting it at a thrift store for like $7. I ended up painting it like a giant Etch-a-sketch. And so that's what I use to Etch-a-sketch on. I Etch-a-sketch on an Etch-a-sketch, basically. And lighting is super important, I found out. So I have an LED light that works out great to see the screen. For me, I just need to set aside the time and do it in one spot. I tend to zone out a lot. So with just anxiety-wise and stuff too, and just, when I start to do it in one spot, I just get very meditative about it, and just sit there, and I kind of forget about everything else in the world. So it's really calming for me actually to Etch-a-sketch. So it's kind of been this calming process as well for me to kind of come down throughout my day, stuff like that. But when I try and take it elsewhere, like the coffee shops, I can doodle and stuff like that. But to actually like work on something, definitely need a dedicated space for it. I usually listen to music. Music's always a great thing while I'm doing that, or podcasts. I always listen to podcasts too. I always try, and I don't know if I try to, I just always multitask somehow. I don't know why, but maybe because I have 3 kids too. But I always like when I'm doing something, I always try and, have something where I can learn something else while I'm doing it, if that makes sense. Like listening to podcasts or something that you can learn other information. But yeah, just having that central spot is super important for me, I've come to find out.
So as you're sitting there, because I imagine these probably take a while to go through, as you're sitting there working through, turning the knobs and whatnot, and you're kind of putting together what that piece of art is going to look like, is there, you listen to music and podcasts, is there anything else you do to kind of stay focused or stay in the zone or in your space?
Once I get into the drawing, I'm kind of just there in that world of turning the knobs and being in the actual picture, I guess, because you're using one little stylus that basically erases the graphite powder from the screen, and it's very fine and small. So I don't use a magnifying glass or anything like that. I just look at the screen, but I'm pretty close to it. So the concentration of doing that, I don't really take too many breaks usually. I end up just kind of sitting there and really paying close attention. But it's kind of funny because I lose track of time really when I'm doing that as well. So there's not much else that I guess do besides, but it just becomes its own little world for me that I go into, and then every once in a while I'll pop out of it. But when I'm in that zone, I'm kind of stuck there, which is nice. And then I end up trying to knock it out usually in one sitting for the most part. There's other ones I've had to do a bunch of times, taken a lot longer. But yeah, I like to just try and do it all in one sitting usually, which can take quite a bit of time. So
It's interesting that you say that because I think about some of the different projects that I work on, and I find when I do my best, it's when I just kind of like I remove distractions, mostly just like I get away from people because
Right.
people are my biggest distraction. And then just focusing on that one task for a period of time, I feel like that really allows me personally to move a lot faster and stay more focused. And when I do that, it's like something that was taking me a half a day to get done. All of a sudden, it's like been 45 minutes and I'm through it. So it's interesting that you say that. That you sit through that. How long does it take you to get done with one of them?
So typically, I work a lot on the pocket-size Etch-a-sketches. So it's a smaller version of the regular one. It's about a fourth the size of a regular Etch-a-sketch. I just prefer those, the way they are in the line quality and stuff. With those, I would say on average maybe 3 hours or so it would take on one of those that I do. So there's other ones too. I've taken about 10 hours on those, but I would say on average, the normal ones I would do are about 2 to 3 hours. So
That's not too bad. I was thinking like 15-hour like marathons, but if it's only 2 to 3 hours, that's not terrible. That's crazy because I think about that, and depending on the day, I know I struggle, and I'm sure a lot of other people struggle just to like sit down for a half hour and focus on one topic or one project. I feel like it just takes so much. You have to like remove everything else, almost plan it out, and kind of set up some I was going to say obstacles, but not obstacles. Set up some boundaries. Set up some boundaries to make sure you can get that done. So you kind of talked about how you got into Etch-a-sketch. You've talked through your creative process. One of the conversations we were having before we got started on here was how it's been a little bit stressful for you lately, and you're talking about how that affects your ability to create new things. Do you want to talk a little bit about the effects of stress and maybe some of the things that you do to work through that and maybe reduce your stress level to help you get into that mindful space that you need to get your work done?
yeah, so I've definitely noticed when it comes to commissions, they stress me out super bad. I'm not quite sure why. I think it's just a matter of wanting to please the customer, make that great, make that worth their while. And when I'm doing commissions, just with life in general, things that come up in life, you get stressed, and that definitely affects the creative process for me personally. And I can tell there's just like a huge mental block, and I'll sit down with my Etch-a-sketch and just sit there and stare, and I'll have like no creative process at all. And that's a super challenge when you have deadlines with commissions. And it's kind of funny, when I'm at my other full-time job, I tend to find that that's when I'm my most creative in my mind, because I'm zoning out from that job, thinking about other things I love doing. And then when I get home, the stress of other everyday things hit me sometimes when I don't have like a full plan on sitting down and doing those commissions, but yet I still need to. That being said, like this last couple of years has been kind of intense for me on certain levels, and I've really started diving into like you're saying with the mindfulness. I've always kind of been into yoga and stuff like that, but one thing that's been huge for me, because I deal with like anxiety and stuff like that, and learning about meditation has been huge. Just like the sitting and breathing type meditation. I mean, there's all sorts of kinds of things you can do to meditate. For me, just the sitting and taking that time with no distractions, and taking some deep breaths, for me has really cleared my head. I mean, there's a lot of apps too that you can use for it. I started using like guided meditation apps that are out there, and then I kind of started getting away from that. I actually ended up going to a class one day. It was a free class at a library, local library, and this guy made a really good point. He was talking about meditation in the point of not using any guided sense for it. For me, it kind of made sense because a lot of times when I wanted to meditate, I like didn't have my phone with me or didn't have my headphones, and I felt like I couldn't meditate because I felt like I needed some guidance, like some music. But the meditation I went to that day, we would just basically, he said the best way, and everyone has their own way of doing it, but the best way was just to sit in silence and meditate that way, because that way you don't rely on anything else. you just rely on yourself. So there's you can kind of get into a deeper meditation, which is really kind of tricky to do as well, because you can so easily get distracted. But I remember sitting there and we did like a 45-minute meditation, and at that point in time I was doing like 10-minute ones, so like 45 minutes was a lifetime. And it was crazy. But just that him saying that has kind of like helped me get that time when I can. It doesn't have to be for me like 45 minutes. It can be 10 minutes here, 20 minutes. But I've noticed personally when I sit down and make a daily practice of it, where I just, sit and breathe and kind of just let thoughts flow and let them go and not really concentrate on anything. For me, that really clears my mind. And when I come out of that and, get back into reality, I tend to realize that, there's just a lot of thoughts that are in our heads that really play with us. And a lot of times they're not real. So like, having those thoughts and then realizing after you kind of sit and think about them, how they distract you, but they're just thoughts and, they pass through. So anyway, that's been huge for me, just to clear my mind. And then once I do that, the creative process like just flows back into me. But it's easier said than done because everyone's got a chaotic life going on. So man, when I can make time for it, it's great. But then I get caught up in the everyday thing quite often too. So trying to get better at it and and learn more and read about it more too. And there's so many resources. And like I said, there's so many different kinds of like ways people meditate on things too. So as long as you can concentrate on something, and for me too, being physically active is huge. If I don't have that during the week, going out and doing something, I know if I don't go out in nature, I just get a creative block as well. So I've tried to be mindful and think of that and why I'm having a block on things. So,
and you give me a lot to think about, because I think we have a lot in common as far as, when I was younger. I mean, for years I struggled with anxiety. I didn't even know that that's what it was. I just thought I was just in a constant state of like panic all the time. And it manifested in social situations, just being uncomfortable. I think if you asked some of my previous college roommates, they would just be like, they would have some interesting stories of some things I've said or done just because I was really uncomfortable, and I just let things kind of go that maybe I just did because I was nervous or was having a little anxiety. And since I got into a meditative practice, I haven't been doing as well as I would like to lately, but it's interesting because like the point you made about guided meditation is good, but if you don't know how to meditate, it's hard to meditate. So it's like I get what the guy was saying about the guided meditation part, but I almost feel like the best way to go is start with guided, get to a point where you kind of know what it feels like, and then try to do it without it. Because I think if I just tried to take the ride without any training wheels on, I would struggle. I think I can handle it now, but the guided meditation almost helps to be like, okay, it's like a snap of the fingers, right? It like pulls you into that state automatically. And then I'd like to, really, really like double down on your comment about nature too. Some people are going to think that I'm on drugs for this next story that I'm going to tell you, but it was a few months ago, and I was stressing about something. I don't know. I just felt off. And I during the summer and spring when it's nice out, I usually make a point of getting out and hiking at least once a week, and for 3-4 hours by myself a lot of the time. And I went out, I don't even remember where I was at, and I'm out hiking, and I can't even enjoy my hike at this point. I'm like just feeling anxious. I try to sit and meditate. It's not working. I finally came to this stream, and I threw on this Alan Watts guided meditation, and that still wasn't working though. I was like, oh man, what the hell? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, the water looks kind of nice. So I took off my shoes and just hopped in the water and went for a nice little swim. And it was the most relaxing, healing thing that I think I could have done at that point in time. And as soon as I was in the water for maybe like 15, 20 minutes, some other people walked by and they're probably like, what's this weirdo doing out in this stream? But once I got out, I just felt like 100 times better. So yeah, meditate, go to nature, do all that stuff. It's really good for you. And you mentioned physical activity, and I wanna touch on this next piece because I feel like it's really important. But I want to back up one step because I feel like you're kind of known as like a mindful guy for the most part, pretty self-aware. People see you doing meditation and stuff like that on your social media. If someone came up to you and asked you how to get started meditating, what would you tell them?
Yeah, pretty much like what you said. I would definitely explore. That's what I did. Was explore the guided meditations because, I've always knew about it or I've heard about meditation and stuff too, and friends that have done it. But I had no idea where to start. That was my biggest thing. Like I had no clue, and I read online and like there was so many resources. I was like literally overwhelmed by meditating. I didn't want to do it because there was like too much information, and my anxiety was going crazy from learning about meditation. And the thing was, I started with just an app. I think it was at the time, I think it was Headspace, maybe is the name of it. But also YouTube, huge. YouTube's got so many great guided meditations. And for one, when you start off with that, like you said, it's kind of like the training wheels, once you start feeling and you get to that point of being able to just sit, it's hard for a lot of people. And when you can just sit with your thoughts, I think when the guided meditation comes into play is that you hear someone else talking you through it. So you're not necessarily concentrating on your thoughts as much at that point, but you're learning the process of just being able to sit through a time, and just learning about why you're doing it and the reasons behind it too. Like when I just kind of looked it up a bit and did a little research on meditation in itself and just the benefits of it, and every book I would read or anything I'd hear, like listen to audiobooks, they kept coming back to meditation. And I was like, there's something to this, right? Like there's gotta be. And so that's when I started looking into it further, and, and now I kind of just sit without any guided music or anything. I just sit, if in nature, that way, or just at home, I kind of have a dedicated space I use, and do that. But yeah, to get started, definitely for me personally, what worked was the guided meditations were huge.
Yeah, and as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about I read this book, Morning Miracle Morning, something like that. I don't know. I'll throw it in the show notes after I figure out what the actual title is. But I remember reading that, and I'd been meditating for a little while, but I'd always done guided, and it just said like, instead of meditating, it just said like sit in silence, and I was like, damn, okay, I'll see what I can do. And the weird thing is it was so hard at first, because when you're alone with your thoughts, like everything kind of bubbles up. Every insecurity you have, everything that you haven't dealt with, it's like it comes up and it's pretty much right in your face. And it's really uncomfortable because I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily enjoy facing those things or dealing with like, oh man, I didn't act like the person that I know I am in that situation, or I feel bad about this thing, or I really need to get this thing done. But once you sit there and kind of face those things and allow yourself to process them, I feel like it almost frees you up to do some of your best work. And I don't know if there's any word for it or a definition or anything, but it's like, just when you are really uncomfortable sitting there in silence, that's probably the most important time for you to do it. Or when I make the excuse of, I don't have time, which I pretty much say every time I skip meditating or skip something else, I don't have time for it. That's probably when I need to do it the most. And it's a really beneficial thing, but it's also like, it can be scary to do as well.
Yeah, the scary thing is that like you're experiencing being in the present, which is terrifying, because people aren't used to just sitting and being in the present. Like this day and age with technology, like I'm super guilty of it. Like if I'm sitting around with nothing to do, I'll grab my phone right away, and check messages or something like that. And when you're not doing anything and you're just concentrating on the now, like that is super weird at first because you're always thinking about the future, the next thing, or 3 steps ahead, or you're thinking about the past or someone that you heard, or just like some feeling you experienced. But when you're just sitting there and letting the thoughts come in and not necessarily concentrating on them, but letting them come in your head and then letting them just go, and not putting much thought into them and just being present is super weird. But it's like what we should do all the time, because we're here now versus living in those thoughts of the future or the past. The past has happened, nothing you can do about it. The future hasn't happened. And you're making these thoughts up that aren't even true yet, but we never really sit and concentrate with nothing or have no distractions. And when you do that, yeah, it makes you feel super uncomfortable. But it's also just mind-blowing too sometimes when you actually can get something out of it. I mean, there's a lot of times too, you'll sit and meditate and then you'll be done meditating and you're like, oh, this was a waste of time, which really it's not, but you'll feel that way because you're not going to feel all like Zen at all. I mean, there'll be times you'll feel great. There'll be times you won't. And I think that it comes with practice and stuff too, and I mean, there's like those Zen Buddhist monks that sit for like hours amongst hours, and man, I don't even know. It's just, to have time for that for one, but if I can do 10 minutes here or half an hour there or something like that, I've noticed just those little increments of time, just sitting in silence and just concentrating on just, your breath or counting your breath or something like that. There's all different techniques you can use out there, but then that helps so much in clearing your mind on those present or those thoughts of the past and the future. And that's when that creative mind outlet for me opens up, because then you have so much room inside your head that is right there on the project you're working on. But yeah, even just like 10 minutes here and there is just, for me, super, super helpful. It's actually been pretty life-changing for me, as in how I go about my day. And then also just makes me more intrigued to look more into it and find out more about it.
And as we're talking about being Zen, you said like, you're not going to get up and feel Zen, which I think is totally true. It's not very often that. I think the first couple times I meditated, I remember my face was kind of numb afterwards. Like it was like, why does my face feel this way? It's because your muscles in your face are so tense all the time. And then when you finally relax, you're not used to it, which is bizarre. But it's not usually then when you feel Zen. What I've found is I get shit all the time, because when I was going through, like, I did 100 days straight of yoga. I usually try to do like yoga and meditation every morning. I haven't been the best about it recently, but I got a bunch of shit up from these guys, and they're like, "You're just a Zen master now." I'm like, well, I guess. I mean, I don't really know what that means. But I'm pretty relaxed, but it's not really when you get done that you feel that, I guess, quote unquote Zen. I don't even know what that means, but it's almost when you face stressful situations, that's when the Zen comes out. It's like you can kind of take a breath and process and not emotionally react. I think that's probably the biggest benefit for me, because when I was younger, I would just like fly off the handle and be like, the sky is falling, the world is going to end. Can't believe I have a flat tire. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And really, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the moments I noticed too. And you're super right about that. Like the stressful moments, just the unexpected in life, and just weird things that'll happen, that'll stress you out. But that's the mindful thing that happens, is that for me, I end up breaking those down. And before I react, like you said, it's really weird. It's hard to explain, but you end up feeling it where something stressful happened, but yet you won't react right away. You see to take a deep breath, because you're kind of, get into that mindset of it. And you kind of break down, like for me, I break down like, why am I feeling this way? What are the reasons behind it? Like I just tend to break things down a little bit more. Yeah, given there's other times too where I'll just react, but like, there'll be certain other times where, I notice myself catching myself in thought of why I'm thinking certain ways. And I think that comes back down to like the meditation and just sitting there and letting those thoughts process and just go through you. And it's definitely helped me a lot in stress with life. Like recently, I was driving my car that I still owe a couple years of payments on, and broke down in the engine. The engine's like done for basically. And I found myself sitting on the side of the road at like 4 a.m. on my way to work. And I wasn't even like mad about it. It was just really weird. And recently I heard this quote on a podcast. I can't think of which one it was, but it was just a great quote. It just, life is going to take you where you need to be. And I was like, well, at this moment I'm here, right? I'm here for this reason in my mind, and whatever that may be, something will come out of it. But, it just gave me a sense of calm. I've realized, me personally, when tragedy is at its worst for me, I'm at my calmest and most clear-minded. In everyday normal tasks, like my mind is going crazy, which is super funny because it should be like the opposite way. But for me, when tragedy happens or something bad happens, that's when I'm at my most clear-minded. And I don't know what that has to do with, if that has to do with meditation or what, but I feel that it has something, just because you're able to kind of sit and break that down before you react. It's like it almost just happens, and like without thinking about it, you end up just taking time before you react somewhat. Yeah, it's super intriguing to me. That's why, just the whole process of it, I just love talking to other people about it and what they do and other people's ways that they meditate. It's really intriguing to me. It's been around forever, so there's something to it, I wish I would have found it way earlier in my life. Would have been great. But I'll take it now, so.
Yeah, if they would only teach this stuff in schools, maybe you'd have a lot more chill kids. I don't know. I won't get into all of that, but I want to get into another kind of odd topic that I know you're a practitioner of. Maybe you can just tell me the story of how you got into Acro Yoga.
Yeah, Acro Yoga. Never knew about it up until this summer. I always have been into fun things, random things. And I happened to meet a girl that was like, "Hey, you wanna go on a date?" And I was like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" She's like, "You want to do Acro Yoga?" And I had no clue what the hell that even was. So I quick looked it up on my phone, see what it was. And basically it's like, in a sense, 2-person yoga, but it's got a circus element to it in a sense where you can, when you get good at it, you can flip people around and stuff, but it's like a balancing act too. And I've always been super intrigued by balance, and I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. So we met midway, and basically our first date or whatever was doing Acro Yoga, and I was hooked. It was crazy. And I've been skateboarding for about 25 years, and that's something I've done the longest ever in my life. And I haven't had anything like hit me that I was that addicted to right away. So when I got into it, I found out about it and we did it that day. That's all I wanted to do. And then I found out there was this community of people that did it, and there's like, videos everywhere, but it's just this thing I never knew about. And just running into other people with, having jams and stuff. And I have 3 daughters, and it's funny because we've always kind of done something similar to that. If you guys don't know what Acro Yoga is, you have to Google it, and you'll know what we're talking about a little bit more. But so I have daughters, like we just use me as a jungle gym, but now we have this like actual thing to do with it, and I've been doing it with them. It's been awesome, and we've bonded over it as well with my girls, and it's just a fun thing to do. And as an adult, like I'm 38, and it's just fun to play and be able to have that creative side of your brain to be able to like interact with someone else, but in a fun, playful way, and to like challenge yourself as well with balance and actually gain strength from it too. It's pretty amazing. And the community of people has been outstanding. It's kind of like my tribe of people. I found like this group of people that are into doing like circusy type stuff, or just like balance or yoga. And at my age, it's awesome to be able to find that, because I don't feel that I'm a typical 38-year-old. Like I've been skateboarding still, and I do like slacklining, and I juggle and do other stuff too, and just a lot of random things. I mean, I'm an Etch-a-sketch artist, who the hell does that? But finding this obscure thing of Acro Yoga has been amazing, and then meeting you through it basically too. And yeah, man, if you guys have never tried it, look it up, give it a shot. And the coolest thing about it, you can be any age or ability, and you don't have to be that strong. It's just, you can learn. And there's a lot of basic courses and things you can take to learn. And there's a whole massage aspect to it as well, with like through Thai massage and stuff too. So I don't know, but anyway, it's kind of changed my life. It's just been a great thing. And just moving to Cedar Rapids here this year, I've met a lot of people through it down here. And yeah, man, I'm just going to keep exploring that because it's such a fun thing to do. And just, you can grow together as friends and in a community of people like that. It's been great.
Yeah, I still remember when I first did Acro Yoga. It was bizarre. I realized I wasn't as flexible as I thought I was. It's fun though. I mean, it has this element of trust to it that it almost kind of tests the trust that you have in maybe your friends that you're doing it with, but also just in yourself and with how much do you trust strangers. It's a great way to really just like kind of let go. And you really, really have to be present because I remember Daniel Tardy and I, one of the times I did acro this summer, he was like, all right, we're doing foot to foot. If you don't know what foot to foot is, just look it up. It's really interesting. You stand on another person's feet. It's kind of difficult. And so we're doing this, and we were probably only in the pose for maybe like 30 seconds or so, but it felt like 20 minutes just because you have to like keep everything lined up. Otherwise you could fall onto the person that you're standing on their feet because they're laying on their back and they're holding their feet up in the air, perpendicular to the ground. And it's, I don't know, it's just a very unique experience where you really, you really have to trust yourself. But I don't know. It's a game changer it sounds like it might be the key to a good relationship too. I don't know. You're gonna have to tell me about that.
Yeah, it's definitely it's been great. The good thing is you can partner with anyone to do it, but when you have someone that you can do it with all the time is awesome. But yeah, that's like you said, it's a trust thing too. Like just in a relationship, you need that trust. But it's great to have that. And that fun element of it, and yeah, to build off of that together, One example I was just thinking of when you were talking, we were doing an open jam downtown in Cedar Rapids here this summer, and there's all these students that came through. They were very, I don't know how you put it, but like very smart. I don't want to say like nerdy in a sense, but like very, not physically fit and stuff like that to label it, I guess. And the greatest thing is that they were intrigued by what we were doing. And so we had a group of like, I don't know, there's like 10 or 15 of them that were standing there. I think they were high school kids that were looking to go to college around here, and they were doing some sort of summer intern thing. And anyway, they all started doing like basic, like the acro yoga moves, but they're really hesitant to do it. And you can tell they've never really done that. It was very out of their element. And when we started doing like the basic stuff, there's the person on the bottom is called a base, and then the person that is on the top is called a flyer, that basically your feet are on them and they're doing poses and stuff. When I saw the two people that were, there's a bunch of kids that were doing it, but when I saw them just start doing it and work together and build that confidence and trust where they probably never have in their life, was so amazing to see. And just to see the confidence that they were building and doing something that was completely out of their element and probably terrified them, but for all of them and their friends to kind of just do it all together and not feel, well, they probably did feel awkward, I guess, but like they started getting used to it, and the laughs and the fun they were having doing this was just amazing to me. And in general, like we were talking before about how things like terrify you, and you don't want to do them, but when you do them, like you feel so different, you feel so like relieved in a sense after it's done, or in the process of doing that. And yeah, just to see their faces of that confidence in growing that was great. And that kind of made me want to help like teach other people too. I'm still super new at it, but just to introduce people to it and see people's faces, and like just to have that fun element of it is like super refreshing to see, especially with kids that I could tell like didn't have a whole lot of like confidence with, being in public situations, and they were in this grassy area, just doing this like weird, awkward poses that people walk by and stare at you and like, what the hell are you doing? It's been great for me too, because I find myself doing this in the most random places where I would be like really self-conscious before, but like doing acro yoga, you just, it is a goofy element to it. You feel kind of awkward at first. I found myself doing it like in bars and stuff, like, not like being wasted, but just doing it because it's fun, just showing other people and just other environments. And it just, you can do it anywhere. But anyway, it's one of those things, it builds your confidence, and you just think less of, other people. And that's another one of those things where you're in the moment, right? Like back to that is where you find those things that you can just be in the moment and present and doing is just like super important and fun to do. And once you find those things, man, definitely explore them and stick with them, because when you can take time out of your day just to like not think about anything but what you're doing at that time is so like great for you. So like being able to find those things are amazing, I think, and just to find that community of people that are into that, whatever that may be. Definitely explore that. It's great.
Knowing that community, I couldn't agree more. It's a great community of people to be a part of. So that kind of brings us to the end of the first part of our show, which usually I just ask guests, I guess you've listened to the show, so I think you're the first listener that I've ever had as a guest, so that's pretty awesome. This is like some type of milestone for me, I guess. So you already know what's coming. What do you think that you do or try to do on a daily basis that you feel like gives you an edge or allows you to perform at your best?
Definitely, it comes back to the meditation. When I try and do that daily when I can, that's huge for me. Just because of dealing with anxiety all through my life and stuff like that. That really kind of sets a tone. I don't necessarily wake up and do it. I usually do it after work. I do it as kind of almost like come down from work to start my day after. And that keeps my mind fresh and clear. And I can definitely tell when I'm not doing it on a regular basis, how my brain gets a little chaotic from not doing it. But that definitely helps me with everyday situations to think through them clearer.
Yeah, I feel like we've really hit the nail on the head a bunch of times with the meditation and being present. So if you listen to this and you still aren't doing it, then I don't know what's wrong with you. So next question is, what do you think the most impactful book that you've read is?
I mean, there's a couple of them. Of course, with The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, right? Is that the one? That book's been great. I think it's kind of a standard, but there's another one. There's a couple other ones I've gotten into. There's one called The Untethered Soul. That's super good, by Michael Singer. I got into a bunch of audiobooks, so I've been listening to them in audio form, but nonetheless, it's just been stuff that kind of breaks down like your brain and your reasons why you do things. And for me, that was such a huge like stepping stone into I guess trying to figure out why I do things the way I do them. But yeah, I mean, The Power of Now, The Untethered Soul, and they're breaking the habit of being yourself is another one that has been kind of life-changing for me, honestly.
I think I've read two out of those three, and they're really interesting. Can't even explain it. You just read them yourselves and come to whatever conclusion that you need to. I think that's kind of the point of the books, is just like, living in the, like we've talked about, living in the moment and kind of figuring out what, like who you are, who you want to be, those types of things, especially with breaking the habit of being yourself. So the last question that I have, ask all the guests, what's next and what message would you like to leave the audience with?
For what's next, I'm still trying to up my Etch-a-sketch game. I'm trying to pursue that a bit more. I have some stuff in a gallery here in Cedar Rapids right now, and then actually have a project that we just recently did called the Silver Lining Project, kind of how we could change the world via an Etch-a-sketch. So 20 of the world's Etch-a-sketch artists did a project on these limited edition chromed out Etch-a-sketches with gold knobs, and was basically ways you could help change or make the world better, right? So I currently have that out in a gallery out in LA, which is great. So I've had some opportunities to possibly do some internships with doing Etch-a-sketch, which is crazy. There are a few people that do it full time. So I'm kind of pursuing that, and then looking into just kind of, taking more of my time to get better at that every day. I'm pretty new to the whole art scene in that. So getting more established in regards to that, I guess. And also I've been playing around the idea of possibly doing some yoga training as well in the near future. I'm just kind of putting it out there. I'm big about manifesting things too. So putting it out there and just having that thought out there is huge too. So yeah, man, just to continue to pursue things that scare you and scare the shit out of you, because that's definitely been a whole year or two of that for me. It's been terrifying, but I've met the greatest people through it. And just that quote I stick with all the time and kind of as a mantra for me is, life will take you where you need to be, has been huge. As long as, keep going with that, man, it just, things happen and you just, keep going from there. Yeah, it's always a roller coaster for people. Everyone's got their own, thing they're going through all the time, and everyone's, got something. But just a matter of trying to think of why these things are happening, and what you can do for yourself to just kind of have that self-care to get yourself through it has been a big focus, and I think is something to be aware of.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this week's show. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Formula, and big thank you to Tim for taking the time to sit down and chat with me. If you thought that Tim's art sounded interesting to you, I've thrown a link to Tim's Instagram into the show notes if you want to head over there and take a look. Now, since it is still early in the new year, I am looking for recommendations from my audience on who you would like to hear, or what topics you would like to hear covered in the show. So if you want to go ahead and shoot me over an email with any thoughts or ideas that you have, send that to trevor@helixacademy.co. Now, that's all for this week's show. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to you tuning in next week. Music for this week's episode was provided by the artist Moods. His link is in the show notes. The Formula Podcast is sponsored by helixacademy.co. Go ahead and head over to our website and check out our previous episodes and online courses that we offer today.